CO2 is unlike any other gas or emission regulated by North Carolina Division of Air Quality or by the EPA. First, it has no toxic effect on human beings, unlike real pollutants, for example, like carbon monoxide or other things that you might be aware of. But more importantly, there is nothing that humans can do, including breathing, that does not involve emitting carbon dioxide. And its presence in the atmosphere is essential for all life on Earth. Without it, we die. Without it, the plants die. And without it, the Earth freezes over. And yet, we are being propagandized into referring to this great gas that surrounds us as a pollutant by environmental extremists and people in government, their allies. The global warming hypothesis that carbon dioxide emissions are leading to the destruction of the Earth is the holy grail for socialists. Once accepted as a policy guide, our lives and our property belong to the state. Make that very clear. If you have the power to regulate carbon dioxide emissions, then you have the power to regulate and control every aspect of our life. A government that has this power is indeed an all-powerful government, and ultimately a society that accepts the premises of people like Al Gore, Barack Obama, Pricey Harrison, Mark Basnight, and I'm sorry to say, John McCain and Elizabeth Dole will ultimately have to choose between free markets and socialism, between liberty and control. That is the bottom line choice that has to be made. As we meet here today, there are politically appointed bureaucrats with the Environmental Management Commission meeting to get this process started here in North Carolina. Without any specific legislative authority and without waiting for any Climate Commission reports or recommendations, the North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources plans on moving ahead to start requiring businesses to report carbon dioxide emissions to the state. The first step is a hearing by the Environmental Management Commission that is going on this afternoon. Diener is calling this part of the regulatory process, quote, a CO2 registry, or euphemistically, a climate registry, as if companies are going to start reporting the temperature to the state. And Diener claims that it's not regulating CO2 by doing this, just measuring the emissions. But let's realize, a regulatory body does not measure anything that it doesn't plan to regulate. And this is the first step, and it needs to be stopped in its track. I urge all of you to demand that Diener halt all action that it is taking or about to take with respect to the regulation, control, or measurement of CO2. This is about people control, not emissions control. You cannot regulate emissions. You can only regulate people. But the pain and human suffering from alarmist activities is not all in the future. The gas prices that we are currently facing are a direct result of the CO2 phobia that has driven Washington decision makers for the past 2 decades. Restrictions on drillings and exploring in our oil-rich nation have been justified by the propaganda of environmentalists who argue that we have to eliminate our addiction to oil and other carbon fuels like coal for the sake of a cooler planet. We Americans are not addicted to oil, coal, or any other kind of fuel. What we are addicted to is freedom and prosperity, and it is that the CO2 fearmongers really want to wean us off of. Their war against inexpensive carbon-based fuels is not about global warming. This is a ruse. Their real war is against a lifestyle and a system of justice and morality that they simply detest. That is the morality of individual freedom and private property. And it is morality that brings prosperity for more people than any value system ever devised. This is what they despise. This is what they are fighting against, and this is what we are defending. In North Carolina, the most recent assault in this war has been on consumers of electricity, as you heard, It came in the form of the state's renewable energy portfolio, Senate Bill 3. The bill requires that all North Carolina citizens buy expensive and unreliable energy generated from so-called renewable energy sources. In North Carolina, this will probably mean industrial wind turbines that are 40 to 50 stories tall, visibly located all along North Carolina's coastline and our pristine mountain ridges, bunched together in wind power plants across what is likely to be thousands of acres of land. The bill also forces North Carolinians to cut back on their overall electricity usage with no concern for the price of electricity or any impact on people's lifestyles or their comfort levels. And just in case anyone thinks this is only the Democratic Party doing the bidding of the environmental lobby, that bill was passed overwhelmingly with bipartisan support. In fact, more Democrats voted against it than Republicans. The citizens of North Carolina should say enough. SB 3 should be repealed, and I thank Dallas for mentioning that. But this is not likely, unfortunately. Environmental groups are already pushing to strengthen the requirements of the bill by restricting freedom even further and forcing us all to tighten our belts even more. New standards for electricity generation and new coercive measures to restrict energy use are all part of the proposals being considered by the Climate Commission. I could go on all afternoon, but I won't. Dallas, I could go. Let me close by saying that events like this are an imperative. For too long, we've been silent while environmental extremists have been making inroads into government agencies and bureaucracies, our education system, and our culture at large, all while the rest of us have just gone on with our lives. Finally, as gasoline and energy prices soar at the hands of our eco-oppressors, people are standing up and saying enough. And I am so glad that Americans for Prosperity is taking this event across the country. Freedom needs a voice, and they are providing it. Thank you, Dallas. Thanks to Americans for Prosperity for the efforts and your hard work.
I'm a lucky guy because recently we had to move the Americans for Prosperity offices, and I'm on the same floor with Roy, and I go by Roy's much bigger office than mine. He has a carbon-sucking office with big old lights in it, and we cool it, and it's just terrible. But Roy has a bumper sticker on his door that says, "Question global warming." And I hope if you've gotten anything out of this event today, and that you will take it with you through your lives, is that if you think these big government policies should be questioned, as we do, you're not alone. For a long time, I believe these people who were concerned about the effect of regulation and big government on our lives, we felt like we were alone. We felt like we were, the crazy old uncle that needed to be thrown in the closet. We're not alone. And we can talk a lot about specific policies, but if you ever have trouble questioning, global warming, and somebody thinks you're kind of nutty because you don't believe in it, remind them one thing. It's our planet too, and I love it just as much as them. I love the North Carolina beaches. I love the North Carolina mountains. I love the golf courses and the sand hills. I love our state parks. I love it as much as anybody. And just because I don't believe in their socialist wealth redistribution schemes doesn't make me less patriotic, doesn't make me less American, and doesn't make me love the planet any less. I'm just smarter than them. So just remember that. And I'll end on this note. I will end on this note. If you really boil down to these policies, now, I can be a little cheap at Christmas, and my brother gives me some lousy Christmas gifts. And I've been known on occasion to re-gift it, wrap it up, and pass it on to somebody else. These global warming alarmist policies are a repackaging. They are a re-gifting of the socialist, big government, wealth redistribution models that we defeated across Europe. They're just the same thing. They're in a new shiny package with a different ribbon. It is about taking money and income from one set of producers and giving it to people who didn't produce. It is about going into your pocketbook Friday afternoon when you get a check and redistributing it to something else. And that's what we need to do, band together and be able to confront these and say it loudly and clearly, because we are not alone in believing that global warming alarmism, just like the balloon says, will result in less freedom and higher taxes.